I thought it would be useful for the board to think about capital a little bit differently, which is to say, what happens when you combine the individual institutional capital infusions that were sort of the first base, first sort of tier of our work, with increasingly focused emphasis on fields, whether it's environment or health or human services, to what happens when all of that is aggregated in a place. And so we actually created this sort of tiers and baskets concept, where the tiers were these three individual institutions, entire fields, and place, which sort of combined everything at once. And the baskets were these sort of baskets of field and domain expertise. So a very, very long way of saying that in many ways, Kresge's move to social investment capital was both logical and counterintuitive. Because in social capital, what you're trying to do is sort of move beyond the grant, which is all Kresge did for a while. And it's also trying to move into different adjacencies to different funding sources, particularly in the private and the public sectors. And again, what Kresge had traditionally done was only work in the confines of the nonprofit itself. And the lead impulse behind whether it's a Healthy Futures Fund or a supportive housing fund or anything we do is the interest of and the willingness of community to really lean into the project and sort of certify that this comes out of community need, community desire, and community voice. And so in every one of those deals, the complexity of the technical financing tools is intensified but is enriched by the sort of the community's input. And I think there is a risk that philanthropy gets so enamored of its tool-making capacities that it just sort of swoops in, parachutes in, and tries something in sort of an antiseptic way. And that just doesn't make any sense. I mean, when you're dealing with low-income housing, when you're dealing with community-based health services, when you're dealing with environmental degradation, you start with community. And it's sort of full stop. If that isn't something that the community can embrace and be deep participant in, it goes nowhere. I do think philanthropy is positioned uniquely to be a bridge, to be a stitcher together of perspective, and as a translator of what really is being said from one to the other. Maybe I could start with the 5 articulated values of Kresge as an institution, because I think they're very closely aligned to my own, as one might expect. It's stewardship, respect, creativity, partnership, and opportunity. Just a very brief word about each, because I think it's actually not necessarily what it appears. I think each institution sort of reads into its value structure something a little bit different. Stewardship is fairly obvious at one level. Every dollar here needs to be spent in a way that we can feel good about in terms of its impact on people who need it the most. And so stewardship, I think, whether you're in the program department or whether you're in the finance department, means that you really watch your dollars to make sure that they're landing with the intended impact. Respect, it has a lot to do with what you would expect, just sort of making sure you're a good colleague. But again, at a more profound level, I think it's increasingly about diversity, about equity, about inclusion, about making sure that your work environment and how you project to the field is all about respect for difference and embrace of the opportunity that comes with that difference. Creativity, again, sort of speaks for itself, but I think in the realm of social investing, it becomes really powerful. We can just do a bunch of deposits in banks and hope that those banks will relend that money creatively. We can do safe loans, but again, I think our staff and our approach to the work is to use creativity to its fullest impact. Let's really sort of stretch the boundaries. Let's understand how you can leverage to the fullest. Let's understand how the partners we work with can be drawn into the work. That is an act of creativity. It's an act of unusual thinking. It's an act of pushing the envelope. It's an act of moving beyond your level of comfort. And so creativity for us is deeply important. Partnership sort of is an overused term, but here it is incredibly important. you've got to park your institutional ego at the door. There are just time and time again opportunities for us to work with others where we are a second player to them. They do something better than we do. They have access in a different way. They have an approach that is different from ours. And true partnership is coming to respect that in that combination of skills and competencies comes a whole new set of opportunities. And the fifth is opportunity. That can speak both internally to the staff about the ability to grow and the ability to try new things and the ability to sort of stretch their professional development goals. But it also is the essence of what we do. We are trying to promote opportunity for low-income people in America's cities. And opportunity has been criticized for being too soft a term, but on the other hand, if you can't create structures of opportunity, you really aren't getting underneath the problem. You're just sort of mandating what appears to be the most pressing in the moment. And we are deeply committed to trying to get to the root of the structural root of so many of social ills. It's grandiose for us to think that we single-handedly can dismantle them or substitute something better for them, but we can help. And so I think when you line up those 5 goals, I suppose many institutions could claim some of them, but I think how we claim them at Kresge is important to our identity. And I think as we look forward, I just think the complexity of social problems, the changing demographics around the world, different new technologies, you're going to need that kind of flexibility and nimbleness and adaptability in order to take full advantage. I mean, I say to our staff, don't focus too heavily on a problem definition that you believe will be true 10 years from now. Focus instead on how you come at that problem, because I can guarantee you the nature of the problem is going to change. The contextual issues around that problem are going to change. The players around that problem are going to change. And so we really, I think, ought to keep our eye on the sort of those 4 qualities that enable us to be adaptable.